Welcome to Book Crew. We are on KCCC 9:30 a.m. in Carlsbad, New Mexico on Mondays at noon. And now we're wide on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, Audible, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, Pandora, Podcast Addict, Podchaser, YouTube, Rumble, and every podcast directory worldwide. On Book Crew, we help writers get their book written, edited, published, and promoted. I am writer and marketing Jedi Dark Cooper, and I'm joined, as always, by author and editor Beth A. Freely. How you doing, Beth?
I am doing wonderful, Dirk. Man, it's been a while since we rocked one of these.
It has. People probably don't know that because we've been doing episodes. We've been releasing episodes regularly, but we took a little bit of a break, and so now it's fun to be back into the seat and do this again. And I finally got to say, where we are located at. We'll have another episode where we dedicate to all of this, but it is a blast to finally be wide on all these different podcast services.
The laundry list of podcast services is amazing.
I mean, I won't list those forever, but let me have my fun here for a little bit.
Oh, heck yeah.
And so what that does is that brings up two things that I need to start mentioning to people. Number one, if I mention a podcast directory that we're not on, like it's a favorite of yours, and we're not on that, please tell us. Get in touch with us. You can see both of our addresses. I am D Hooper at themusesfunhouse.com, and Beth is B Rauch, Rauch at themusesfunhouse.com. I know it's going to screw that up. But get in touch with us. And also, one other thing I want to mention is please leave us a review, because now we got to chase after reviews.
Yes, please.
When you're on a podcast directory, we desperately need reviews, and the bigger the podcast directory, the more reviews we need. So, like Apple, Spotify, those two in particular would be really huge if we could get some reviews from people who are listening to us, because that will drive people to us.
And for those of our listeners that are in the Carlsbad, Artesia, Roswell area, if you heard an episode that you really liked, jump on one of these podcast aggregators and leave a review there, especially if you want to re-listen to it. This gives you the opportunity to go back and re-listen to the podcast and give us a review as well. We're going to continue being on the radio, but give us the reviews.
I would love to.
Which, by the way, I heard from the head of KCCC in Carlsbad, and he said the views on the show are great. So thank you to everyone in the Carlsbad, Artesia, Roswell area that has been listening. We appreciate your support, and please keep listening.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, look, we taught when we first started up with this new format, it was really guided by the terrestrial radio spot, and that's still very, very important to us. I would love to get on some more terrestrial radio, to be honest with you.
Because that would be cool.
I think that there's still people who are listening to that, and I also think that I think that we probably have the most fans in that area. I think because it's because we have a probably a dedicated wide audience and stuff. So we definitely love that crowd. They're getting the episodes before anyone else is.
Oh yeah.
And more consistently than every place else. But also having options on podcast also allows us to do episodes where we can go longer in our format, and Beth and I have talked about that, or do special episodes, or do extra stuff. And also, along with that, maybe I should mention that right now, is we have a website that we just launched. Beth did a great job putting that website together, and I think it looks really cool, so please go check it out. It is bookcrewpodcast.com. Pretty easy to remember. Are you ready to get to our interview?
Yes, let's talk with Bill.
All right. Meet Bill Hulseman, the writer, ritual designer, and former educator who is challenging what it means to belong in his deeply reflective debut book, Six to Carry the Casket and One to Say the Mass. Hulseman explores queer identity, Catholicism, family, and personal agency with unflinching honesty. Bill, welcome to Book Crew.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. Hi, Beth.
Glad to have you.
You two have met before on Bookfest, right?
Bookfest, yep. I moderated a panel that Bill was on, and we had a lot of fun with that panel. It was really interesting discussions all around.
And what an interesting mix of authors on that panel. When you pull people together with different books, and
big,
just listening to the other folks on the panel is like, oh, there's such interesting stuff coming up. I don't have time to read all this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that's cool. Yep. When is the next Bookfest coming up, by the way?
PR is insane. Next Bookfest is in October.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, I can get the dates here. You guys talk for a minute. I'll get dates.
All right. Well, to start with, Bill, I want to ask you how you went from being an educator to doing what you call ritual design, and also please explain that term.
Oh, sure. Well, my academic background is in the comparative study of religion. And I did a master's in that field, and my focus was ritual and how we use ritual to build communities, to shape cultures, to shape relationships. I found that really interesting. I found that really fascinating. I started teaching. I taught world religions in a high school level, and I was a campus minister at a little Catholic girls' school outside of Boston. And I got to apply a lot of my academic background, but I also got to apply a lot of my faith background and my interest in building community and retreats and liturgies. And I got to teach these classes on world religions and develop some really interesting curriculum, and it was fun. It was wonderful. It was great. But I was a gay man working in a Catholic school, and so there's a line of what you can share about yourself. In Catholic schools, every school is really different, and I worked in, I think, really progressive and inclusive schools that were intent on both being safe spaces for students, but also for faculty and staff and colleagues. And so I was really lucky to land in a couple of Catholic schools where that was the experience. But even in that environment, they still shouldn't have hired me according to the teaching rules of the church.
Yeah.
But they did, and I did a great job. Yeah. But there was, I didn't share that I was gay. I didn't come out to students. I didn't come out to families. Students knew, everybody knew, but we didn't talk about it, and we couldn't talk about it. And even when students would come out to me, and I was often the first person that they were talking to and exploring questions and hanging out. And as a teacher, as a campus minister, as a person, that's an incredible privilege to be the first person to have that conversation with a kid, And so I wasn't recruiting anybody. I wasn't, telling my story. They were coming to me and telling their story, but I couldn't even tap into my own experience really to let them know. In part it's because, I'm teaching the church, but also queer teachers in religious institutions carry a burden, because if anybody doesn't like you for whatever reason, might be because of your sexual orientation or for some other reason, they can cause problems not just for you, but wreak havoc on the whole school. And I was in an order school, so the way that works in the church hierarchy, if somebody had a problem, they wouldn't go just to the local bishop or the local diocese. They would go to Rome, and then Rome, go to the local diocese. The local diocese.
Oh wow!
Order, and then the
that's
order
crazy.
To put pressure on whatever the institution is. So every day I'm walking into school thinking, okay, the weight of this entire network of schools is on my shoulders.
Wow,
and that's a little dramatic, but there is that.
I understand that, sure.
Yeah, and when equal marriage became law, there was it was a great moment of progress for LGBTQIA plus people, but it also means that your sexual orientation became a matter of public record. And so after that happened, every time equal marriage came to a state, you'd see a spate of firings, from religious institutions, Catholic schools.
Wow.
So that was out there. It was a real threat to my career and my livelihood and the work that I love so much. But I put it on the side. After many years of doing this kind of work, I had moved to a different school, had different roles, but I was still very enthusiastic about being in a religious school, being able to move the needle, share my own faith experience. And then I went to a conference with Dan Savage speaking about the It Gets Better project. And Dan and his husband Terry, Dan is a sex columnist and writer and a podcaster for decades, has been a voice and authority on relationships.
I read his articles. Yeah.
Yeah, he's great, and he knows his stuff. Man, he knows his stuff. So he was talking about the It Gets Better project that he and his husband started because there was this spate of suicides by queer teenagers, and it was a way to, YouTube could get a message to kids that even if the doors were locked and they were locked inside at home, like on their phone, they could get onto YouTube and they could hear the message, "It gets better." So it was a wonderful talk. It was very interesting. It was a very successful project. And then they took questions from the audience, and somebody got up to say they were asking a question for somebody else who couldn't ask a question because they worked at a conservative religious school, that even getting up and asking a question in this environment would risk that person's job. And everyone in the room was like, "Oh, could you imagine working there?" Except for those of us from the religious schools, we were like, "Oh, yeah, do we know each other?" That's
right.
Familiar. Yeah. So the question proceeded something like, "I'm a queer teacher. I'm at this school. It's important to me because I'm a presence for my queer students. How can I better support my queer students, or questioning or exploring?" And he cocked his head and he thought for a minute and he said, "You're not going to like my answer." And he said, "You need to get your resume in order." He said, "You think your presence there is communicating that they're safe, that they're, there's someone like you who's got an eye and taking care of you. But what you're really communicating is that it's okay to leave part of yourself at the door on the way into work in the morning."
Wow.
And in that half second, like my entire self-understanding.
It's pretty powerful.
Exploded. Right.
Yeah.
It just melted. And and it really set me on a path of discernment. And it led me on a path to a different school and out of working in Catholic schools. I couldn't unhear that, and I couldn't unthink, oh my gosh, what have I communicated to students? All this time I thought I was creating a safe and inclusive space, but and I really was saying, like, you know what? Yeah, it's okay to leave part of yourself on the way in. Like, it's okay. Yeah. I couldn't work with that anymore. I couldn't live with that. So I started my path to a different kind of school. But unfortunately, just as I was doing that, my family went into crisis because my parents were both very ill and declined pretty quickly. I got a job as a middle school principal at an Episcopal school, which was very exciting.
Wow,
First thing I did was put up a safe space poster in my office, which I couldn't do in a Catholic school before. So it was very exciting. But then 2 days before the first day of school, my mom died after a long illness, and we were ready, but I like to joke that she had very good timing, and she always was very good at reminding us of our priorities. And so here I'm the big shot, going to be in charge of the middle school, walking onto campus, and then my mom says, "No, like let's keep the focus." So my mom died, and I never really got my feet on the ground in that first year. And then the second year, I was like, "Okay, this is the year. This is the year. It's gonna be great." And then my sister died very suddenly, and that just that was totally unexpected. I didn't know how to respond to that. And then a couple of months later, my dad died, and so my whole family was just in this cycle of grief. And we had been taking care of my parents as they were declining, and anytime I could, I had a long weekend. I had a week off. I was back in Chicago to give my siblings who lived nearby a break, and take my dad to the hospital, to doctor's appointments, things like that. And all of that, plus this incredibly difficult and exciting job, but very difficult work, I burned out. I broke. There was nothing left. I woke up one day and I didn't want to go to school. That was the first time in my life that had ever happened. And I thought, okay, this is a sign. Something's broken. Something's broken. So I took a year off to do nothing and heal. In that period of time after my dad died, I met my now husband, and we had made a plan to move in together. And so in that year off, I took that as a year to prioritize life over work. And I got well, we moved in together, we got married. It was great. We were just getting settled in, and I was starting to feel better and heal. And then the world shut down. So COVID happened. It just COVID came to Seattle just a few months after we got married. So here I was in this place of burnout and searching for, how did I land in this place? What was it in my life that brought me to this moment? But also, what can I tap into, like, to move forward? What do I want to hold on to, keep moving forward? So I wanted to reflect on that, but then I also wanted to understand how we all landed in 2020. 2020, the pandemic, and in the U.S., the political strife and the murders of Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor and George Floyd, and how it happened to us that year. How did we all land here? And we're all still recovering from it, right?
Sure.
So that's where the writing really started. I didn't set out to write a book. I set out to just write the process. I started writing in my weekly newsletter. I started a consulting practice, and so I would put an essay in a weekly newsletter as a way for me to process things and bounce some ideas and engage people. I wanted to be in dialogue with people. And after about a year and a half, I stepped back and saw a through line through a lot of the essays about identity, and I thought, well, maybe that's something. And so I started looking closer and started culling essays, and a book sort of emerged out of these essays. It's been a really interesting process. The third part of the book, though, the first two parts really focus on my formative experiences and relationships. So a lot about my family and a lot about religion and my work. And the third part, though, I call Pride. And it celebrates things, or people, places, experiences, art that gave me language to understand myself, that helped me understand my queer identity, that, where I could see myself reflected as a kid, where I couldn't see myself reflected anywhere else in my life. So those essays in the third part of the book are intended to celebrate the things that helped me shape that piece of my life. And it was a way to personalize Pride for me. It was like, Pride is all of a sudden big parties and parades, and and we've seen the corporate takeover of parades, and until this year, when all of a sudden the corporate money started pulling out and they started backing out. I think that's a real gift, because it lets us refocus what Pride is all about for us. So for me, that was an exercise in making Pride very personal and having something to draw on, finding inspiration in TV shows like The Golden Girls and designing women that were so important to me, or books like The Beautiful Room is Empty, and movies like Valley of the Dolls, and places like clubs that I went to, Man Ray in Cambridge, Mass, and Berlin and Chicago. These were places that I didn't know it at the time, but every one of those places, every one of those experiences was planting a seed that I have been able to tap into now. And I experienced this moment of crisis and an opportunity for transformation, and these are the things that I'm tapping into to move forward. So that's what the book's about.
Okay, let me ask you, what is ritual design before we move on to the book?
Yeah, I forgot about that part of the question.
That's okay.
I get so excited talking about.
That's okay.
That's okay.
Girls, it's off the rails. So, when I finally I had recovered and I was in a place to start thinking about work again, and I thought, what am I going to do? And I thought I was going to run back to schools, but I went back to ritual. So over the years, I had done weddings for friends, ceremonies for friends who were doing something interfaith, or they wanted something very authentic to them, but they didn't have a tradition to draw on. And so I did weddings for friends, and it was great. It was lovely. And when I was thinking about what I want to do next, that was what came to the surface for me. Maybe there's a need. Maybe somebody who doesn't want just to go to the courthouse and doesn't want to download a script off the internet, and they don't have a tradition, cultural or religious tradition, to tap into for their wedding.
Yeah.
And so I started a ritual design practice. And so most of my work is weddings, but I do all kinds of rituals. but most of my work is weddings. I work with couples to design a ceremony. My goal is to create a ceremony that is authentic to them, that reflects their experiences, their identities, their values. And that means looking very carefully and scrutinizing a lot of the things that we associate with the American wedding. You know, the traditional American wedding, all these components, all these pieces originated in very different places and times.
Sure.
And they carry with them values of those different places and times. And so I like to work with couples to give them context, like, well, if you really want to do this, if you have a sentimental attachment, let's reframe it, because the history of it is troubling. Or I provide some context and they say, oh no, we don't want to do that. Let's do something different. So it's an exciting, it's creative work. It's engaging. But yeah, most of the work is really designing these rituals for these peak experiences. You know, I think we underplay the power of ritual, and I think ritual is a really powerful tool to move the needle in our cultures, you know, in our spaces. I'm hopeful that, you know, the weddings that I work on might be moving the needle ever so slightly, you know, because everybody who goes to those weddings and they see, oh, it can be done differently. Oh, we don't have to use that archaic language. Yeah. Oh, we don't have to be hyper heteronormative. Oh, we don't have to do a big entrance to begin the ceremony, you know. So I think it's maybe a ripple effect of just seeing what the possibilities are and creating our experiences instead of just letting them be created for us.
I think that's actually fascinating. I'm a professional photographer. I've been to a lot of weddings, you know, plus, you know, friends and family and everything else. Mm-hmm. And I've thought that way as well. Like, you know, some of the people were not religious, but they were doing a religious ceremony. Mm-hmm. And it seemed like to me that maybe there could be something different. Maybe, you know, it's your wedding. I mean, you only supposed to do one of these things. Yeah. You know, might as well do it your way. You know, do it so that it means it's not just you kind of saying the words by rote, but instead maybe bring something of yourself. I think what you're doing is fascinating.
Thank you. Thanks.
And that's what Dan and I did. Oh, sorry, that's what Dan and I did when we got married. You know, we didn't want to be. I had already done the whole big wedding thing. This was my second marriage, and I was like, yeah, I don't want to do that again. So we found a justice of the peace who was more than willing to come over to our house. She was a reverend and a justice of the peace. She and her husband came over, and we had the ceremony in our backyard. She wrote some fun vows for us, and we did like a little, you know, hand fasting thing with the rope and everything. And, you know, and at the end, she handed us the marriage license, and I stood there holding it and just pointing at Dan while her husband took the photos for us. We didn't tell anyone. The only people who knew about this was my daughter and my mother and his dad. That was it. So that was the beginning of December. Christmas was when we told everybody we got married.
Oh, wow.
Because we wanted to do it our way for that exact reason.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Yeah, on the one end, you've got these traditions that are increasingly archaic, and on the other end of the spectrum, you've got, you know, the Pinterest generation and the internet, you know, the Instagram culture. It's like, oh, everything's a photo op. Everything is manufactured. You know, there are things like that were once beautiful and authentic, spontaneous moments that have now turned into like, oh, now we have to pose for this, and everybody has to do this. So somewhere in between is where the creativity is, and you know, giving people permission to do the kind of wedding that they want to do. If you want to do a big froofy wedding with 500 people in a cathedral, awesome. If you want to do it in your backyard in your own privacy, awesome. As long as it's authentic to you.
Sure.
That's the key.
And you know, it strikes me that you being an educator for world religions, it puts you in a unique perspective.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
To do this very thing. It's like you were kind of, you know, you're the perfect person to be doing this.
I have joked with some friends that I don't regret my career in education at all, but I joke that, oh, finally I figured out what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
I had these interests that never really fit in the intersection of skills and tasks that I had. Every job I had, nothing really was the right combination. it didn't seem to fit any molds.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, oh yeah, this is exactly what, my degree is useful for.
For sure.
It gives me like a structural understanding of things, but also the cultural sensitivities. I was basically trained in cultural diversity as a grad student, and that's incredibly valuable to me throughout my life. But it's especially helpful. Sometimes couples want to do something interfaith, interreligious. They want to combine things. I'm not a believer in cafeteria ceremonies of like, oh, we'll do this prayer from that tradition and this prayer from that tradition, and that makes it interfaith. I'd rather find what's the common ground between you two, and then let's tap into what's meaningful from your traditions. And I'm not going to do anything that's inappropriate for me to lead. I'm not going to do something that in one religion, so I'm grateful that I have the education, the background to figure out what's appropriate for me to engage in.
Right.
Sure.
I'm not ordained in another religious tradition. I'm not going to perform their rituals unless it's modified or unless it's appropriate. So, and I think my academic background really helps me with that. Yeah.
Who did you write your book for?
Myself. And really a lot of the book was, it was really just processing what was happening in my world. I had been through so much, and I wanted to become something new, and I didn't know what that was, and I needed to write to figure it out. I needed to process that. I needed the space to do that, and that's the writing has always given me that space. I've just never shared what I've written before in such a public way. I might have written it for myself, but I've published it for anyone who's trying to figure it out. And I think reflection is incredibly valuable. It's always been important to me. Lots of different modes of reflection are important to me. I was able to play with a lot of different modes of reflection as a teacher, as an educator, working with students on classrooms or in retreats and other experiences. I think reflection is a really undervalued tool for us. And so I wanted to say, hey, I'm privileged to have these tools at my fingertips, and here's what I did with it. So I hope you can too. If you're searching for how did you land here? How did we all land here? I hope I'm not giving you any answers. I'm not trying to give anybody answers or tell anybody how to live their life. I just, this is how I ask questions and further questions, and how I make meaning out of what we're going through and what I'm experiencing. So I think a lot of people are maybe searching for tools, and if they are, I hope they stumble across the book. Yeah.
Did you start out writing these more like a journal?
No, I'm not really a journaler. Isn't of all the modes of reflection? And I've always admired people who keep diaries. Daily journal. They sit down and capture their thoughts. For me, it was more of I sit down to write because something was gnawing at me, or because something was bubbling up, or because I was reacting to something that was happening in the world, or and some of them I had an experience and I just wanted to capture it. One of the essays I call Witness. I had gone to it's a recap of, and it's kind of like a little mini diary of my experience at a march in Seattle right after the invasion of Ukraine a couple of years ago. And so it's sort of, I found myself like surrounded by Ukrainian Americans going on this march, and I suddenly felt like, oh God, here's this one random guy who's not Ukrainian, and what am I doing here? So I started paying attention to what was going on and what I was experiencing, and I just wanted to hold on to that, and that's why I sat down. I got home, and immediately from that protest and from the rally, and I got home and I stared at the wall for about half an hour, and then I opened my laptop and started writing, because I wanted to hold on to it. I wanted to grab it. Yeah. So there were some things that it was just responding to something that had happened or something that was coming up, or I wanted to capture and crystallize something that I had experienced.
What was the point that you made the decision to put all of these thoughts into a book? Was it before you started writing this stuff, or did you get halfway through writing these things and think, wait a minute, I got a book here?
No, most of the essays had been written in some form. They've all evolved and they've merged and culled and rewritten some things, but at least the starting point for each of these essays was written well before I decided to pull it together into a book. It was really at the encouragement of a handful of friends who made a point to say, "Are you turning this into a book?" They were reading my newsletter every week, like, "I hope you're doing this as a book." And
that's
people
good.
are nice. They say that, like, I think that's lovely. That's fine. But then when a second person said that to me, and then a third person said that to me, and I thought, okay, well, so I planted an idea in my mind, but it wasn't really until I could step back and see it myself that there was something tying everything together. I didn't want to just write a book and just like spill my soul out for everybody just so I could say I wrote a book. It just I put it together because it felt meaningful, and it felt it told me it wanted to be published more than. And I'm not trying to say there's a spirit in the book that's alive, like trying to get out, but it told me it wanted to be published. It wasn't really a concerted decision on my part to do so. I will say though, friends had encouraged me, and I started thinking about it, and then I started learning about the publishing process. I did a couple workshops on how to write a proposal and how to.
That's right where I was going next.
So many times, right? You've been through it, I realized just finding a literary agent is a full-time job.
Oh yeah.
Oh yes, it is.
I got no responses after like 6 months. I was like, oh, this isn't happening. So I'm sitting
editing the book, formatting the book.
Well, not quite
publishing
yet.
the book.
No. I had it together, and then I was sitting at a red light, and a supporter's spot came up on the local NPR station, and it said Peanut Butter Publishing looking for new authors with works at any stage of the publishing process. And I thought, well, I like peanut butter. That's a good sign. And they say, really? And at this point, I was kind of like, this is never happening. I sent it out. I've got no bites, no responses, no thank yous. So I was like, we'll see. So shot an email and said, hey, I heard this. What's the process? And within, I think, about 18 hours, I got a response, and we started moving forward. And it's a wonderful little independent, publishing house based in Seattle. And so they gave me an editor to work with, Daniel Harvey, who really heard me and understood what I was trying to do, and was able to kind of lay out a path for me to follow. And I really liked working with her on that. They set me up with Amy at Soundview Design to do the formatting and everything, and I took the cover of the book. It's from a photo by my friend Joel Avery, who's an artist and a teacher based in New York, and so being able to tap into his work to incorporate it into the design process, it was it was fun. Like once you get I loved the editing process. I hadn't gotten feedback as a writer for since I was in grad school.
I do too.
I love it. It's wonderful, especially once you're able to trust your editor, and you feel. Once I felt like once I knew that she understood what I was trying to do, it was just smooth sailing. It was lovely. I loved every piece of it. And then when you get to the layout, that's the real fun stuff. Then fonts and laid out. So that was fun. That was a fun part. It was a nice way to wrap up, kind of the grueling effort of writing and revising, and then you get to lay out, and it's like, it's all worth it, right? Yeah.
That's good. Look, you solved a lot of issues that people who self-publish have to go through, which is, finding the editor, finding the person to design it, publishing it and stuff. So I think you did a good job by finding someone to kind of shepherd you through that.
Yeah.
I was lucky.
For sure.
It was good timing all around. If I was not stopped at that stoplight at Green Lake at that moment, NPR spot,
Isn't it? Yeah, isn't it funny how things kind of work out sometimes?
Yeah.
When did you publish the book, and what have you done to promote the book since then?
It came out officially published July 8th, 2025. And
Okay, so it's brand new.
Yeah,
it's brand new.
Yeah, brand new. I like. Yeah, it's great. All the books still have that new book smell. It's awesome.
I'm all about that.
Best smell in the world.
Yeah, I like that.
And once in a while, I just pick up a book and like,
Yep.
Yeah, I've been lucky to work with the team at Black Chateau, who have connected me with some great conversations. So most of the work to promote the book has been having really cool conversations. Some of it is with people who have not read the book, and they've only seen some surface information about me, and that leads to a really good conversation. Some of it, gosh, I had a conversation with a guy I was shocked. I was kind of floored. He read the book. He took notes. He knew more about the book than I did. He was throwing these things back to me and these insights, and I was like, "Oh my god!" And it honestly was kind of the first moment that I realized, "Oh my god, people are going to read this book."
Yeah,
okay,
it's out there.
He actually read it and he wants to talk about it.
It's out there.
I was floored. I was floored. And I've done two kind of in-person events so far. On book publication day, we hosted an event at Charlie's Queer Books in Seattle, and in my neighborhood in Fremont. It's this wonderful little queer bookstore in the neighborhood, and they've got a space outside, and there's a wine shop downstairs, and like a lawn. And so we were outside on the lawn for this, and had about 40 people. Books and wine, and it was a summer night. It was just wonderful. So, and my husband got me he had made a supersized book cover, like a one of those banners that's like 8 feet tall. Yeah. So we had that as a backdrop.
Oh, that's great.
We were able to
that is awesome.
And,
that is.
I asked people to vote for which story they wanted, which essay they wanted me to read. So I selected 10 from the Pride section of like, okay, these are short enough and they'd be fun to read. And so the votes were people voted by marbles, dropped little marbles into bowls to vote.
There you go. That's
and they voted for the Golden Girls, so I got to read my Golden Girls essay, and which is the last essay in the book, and it really does culminate a lot of the threads of the book, all kind of land in the Golden Girls, and so I was really happy to be able to share that. The other in-person event was done at the bookstall in Winnetka, my hometown outside of Chicago, and the bookstall hosted a conversation between me and Alice Moody, who's a friend of mine, who's a facilitator, short story and literature facilitator. So she kind of interviewed me with a group of people at the bookstall. So it was exciting to go to my hometown. The bookstore. It was my mom's favorite bookstore. It was kind of weird, kind of talking, kind of making fun of my mom, like at her own favorite bookstore. But it was really cool to go home and for that to be part of the experience. That was really beautiful for me. It was funny to look out and see several of my siblings like out there. Several of my siblings were there, and one of my teachers from my theater director from high school was there.
Oh wow!
That's
it was
cool.
Like my whole life was flashing before my eyes.
Yeah. That's the power of books, When you put yourself out there and stuff, it can be pretty wonderful.
Yeah.
We're down to about the last minute and a half, so I want to make sure that people can find you. So please tell us where they can find you and where they can find your book, please.
Absolutely. BillHulseman.com is my website. It's both my work, my ritual design work, you'll find there, and also information about the book. Look at the menu for Bill's book, and that'll take you to the page for 6 to carry the casket, 1 to say the mass. So on the web, I'm also on Instagram and Facebook as Bill Hulseman Rituals, and if you're in the Seattle area, let me know. I'd love to hear other people's stories about what are they thinking about, what are they reflecting on, what are the things they want to hold on to, and what are the things they want to leave behind as we move forward. So BillHulseman.com, Bill Hulseman Rituals on Instagram. I'd love to engage.
Bill, thanks for joining us today.
Yes, thank you, for sure.
Thank you for the invitation and for the time.
And everybody who's listening, you can catch the panel that I did with Bill on the BookFest website and YouTube channel if you want to learn a little bit more about that. Yeah.
Beth, tell us where we can find you.
You can find me in the usual haunts. You can find me at bethannfreely.com if you're looking for my novels. If you're looking for editing and website work, you can find me at the Muses Funhouse. You can also find me on Facebook, Threads, Blue Sky, Instagram, B.A. Freely. That's Frely.
Cool. I'm at writeworks.dirkcooper.com. Yes. I have an All My Links site. You can see all the stuff down there. It's All My Links, backslash Dirk Cooper Writing, and a bunch of other stuff. I just launched a new Substack, and I can't remember the name of it, so heck with it. I'll get it on another deal. Before we go, I want to say that Beth A. Freely is offering editing and book trailer services, and I'm offering author, social media management, and designing book covers and laying out books at themusesfunhouse.com. I'd like to invite everyone to join and participate on our Book Crew Facebook group. It's facebook.com/group/Book Crew Podcast. Join and tell your author friends. Finally, visit our site, bookcrewpodcast.com, for the information on this episode and all our previous episodes. Thanks to our guest, Bill Hulseman. For Beth A. Freely, I'm Dirk Cooper saying, dream hard.